I'm Andrew McCrae, visiting with Olivia Steinmetz, who is the Alfalfa Research Director for Legacy Seeds. Olivia, tell me how you wound up coming to this role. I'm sure that you had experiences before this, but what led you to Legacy?
Yeah, so I actually grew up in this area, not on a farm, but in the country. I guess where we are specifically, I'll answer that. The research farm is in Waupaca, Wisconsin, which is right in the middle of the state. I grew up in Amherst, Wisconsin, another small town nearby. But then I went down to UW-Madison for college, and I studied horticulture and environmental studies and global health. Kind of found that agriculture was a super happy medium with those three areas. And I was working for the university as a plant pathologist, actually in alfalfa, but from a very different point of view. It was, pathology would be diseases of alfalfa. So it was more of a laboratory and greenhouse focus. And at that time, Dave Husett, the previous research director, was receiving help and pathogens from my boss, essentially. So Doug Rouse is a plant pathologist from UW-Madison. He has done a lot of research with Aphanomyces, which is a specific disease of alfalfa. So Dave would come to Doug, and Doug would give him the isolates to work with, so the specific pathogen. And this was, they've been working together for years. And at that time, I was, fresh out of school, getting research experience, thinking about grad school, but, just pretty open-minded about, what I would do. And at that time, pretty casually, Dave Husett mentioned, I've been doing this for a number of decades now, and I'm probably going to need to retire in a few years. And it just kind of started as a casual conversation of Dave and Doug, and I happened to be there. And my professor was, generous enough to say that I would be a great fit for this. So we started a conversation, and I went down to visit the field site with the both of them down in Evansville, Wisconsin. That's in southern Wisconsin, where Dave Husett had been based out of. And it became really, really exciting really, really quickly. So it went from just this conversation with this, this breeder, it might be good just to practice an interview for me. I'm fresh out of college. Let's see what this is all about. And at that point, they were just about to break ground at this research farm here in Waupaca. And that was just so serendipitous. I was like, are you kidding me? That's like my backyard. That's where I'm from. So it was this combination of me being in the right place at the right time, and also just being really excited about the opportunity to eventually move back to small town central Wisconsin, but working as a researcher, as kind of this high level scientist. It kind of felt like, whoa, this is pretty sweet. So, it was a multi-year process and conversation, and I was really fortunate enough to work with Dave Husett to create my thesis project. So I then got my master's in plant breeding and genetics, also at UW-Madison, working with a team of researchers there, including Doug Rouse from plant pathology. And we could kind of, as a team, create this project that I could work on and help answer a question that was, very relevant for the breeding program. So it was just kind of this slow build from student and part-time worker to now the last few years I've been here full time.
Right. Talk about your role then today. What is it that you do? Obviously, you're doing research, but kind of give us a behind the scenes look at the types of things you're doing to continue to help Legacy Seeds.
Yeah, so one thing I absolutely love about plant breeding and my job specifically is that it changes from month to month and week to week. My research focus on a daily basis can change a lot. So we kind of have to zoom out and look at a full year, because I'm essentially following the needs of the plants. I'm responding to what is happening in nature. So from a research perspective, all winter long, the alfalfa plants are not doing much outside. So what that means is I'm in the greenhouses and I'm in the lab, and I'm doing that plant pathology work again, kind of from my background. So that's been super awesome to have the facility here and to kind of build my own lab and have 2 greenhouses here where we can do that work all winter long. So from a research perspective, we are getting data on disease resistances to all the top pathogens that realistically would be out in a field and a farmer would be faced with. So we're getting data on that. And we're also, as a plant breeding program, we're getting resistant plants from that. So all winter long, I'm doing these different disease screens like anthracnose, Aphanomyces, Phytophthora root rot, and so on. And then I'm keeping those resistant plants and they become part of our breeding program in the future. So what I'm doing now all summer long is kind of looking at the other end of the pipeline and stuff that's actually out in the field. So with alfalfa, it's harvested every 28 days. That's what we do as well. We are gathering data on yield. So we're testing all of our different brand new experimentals against the competitors' top varieties, as well as our own top like brand varieties. And because alfalfa is a perennial, like what I'm doing later today, like I'm going to go outside and harvest yield data from plots that are from 2019, from 2020, from 2021, and from this spring. So essentially, because it's a perennial, we need multiple years of data. So as a scientist and as a researcher, I can also kind of almost travel through time, looking at, I'm gathering different research information depending on where it's at in that research and development pipeline, which also makes it really interesting. It's like all of this brand new stuff that just got planted in the spring, like I'm super excited about, but I always have to be patient with that specific material because it needs to prove itself year after year. So I can at least, I can go and visit this yield trial, it's 3 or 4 years old. That's going to be something we can find a home for. We can start to think about selling it or naming it. So there's always something to look at, which is really interesting. And yeah, I really appreciate this. My research is on a day-to-day basis different. And then when you zoom out, it's like there is this very, very big picture. And some of the stuff I'm doing today, especially in the winter, like some of that work that I'm doing in the winter, I won't really feel the results of until like 5 years from now. So it's like, you have to really be patient and do that research from day to day for the large, long-term, slow-moving goals.
So what is it that you believe sets Legacy Seed apart then from competitors? Because that's part of your job, is to do the research to have the product that will stand out.
Yeah, so our focus has always been on yield, persistence, and quality. And that, if you've talked to Dave Husett, that's always been from his day one 20 years ago. Like he's been focusing on that because those are what farmers really, they notice, they care about. Those goals are the same for me. I would say I'm just adding that improved disease resistance, which Dave also did. Like he was, very focused on that. But I believe that by improving and continuing to improve disease resistance, that's a great way to achieve all of those goals kind of horizontally. So with excellent disease resistance, you're going to maintain that yield, you're going to maintain that quality, and you're going to achieve persistence. And those goals take time. So I think what might set us apart is that we're not hasty, we're very thorough. And again, with it being a perennial crop, traits like persistence, like that is such a large, it's almost like a concept, it's like, it's not as if there's one gene for persistence and there's no replication for time and winters here in central Wisconsin. The more time that we let our material prove itself, the more we know that we are only moving forward the best of the best. And that takes a lot of humility, and you have to be humble. On paper you might have a variety that is super exciting, but if 3 years in it's starting to not be as persistent, not as vigorous, I'm not going to sign off on it. With a name like Legacy, it almost feels like this constant subconscious, like, oh, this is my legacy, I can't rush this, I can't just put something through because we got to make this happen. It is this biological process that takes time. And so I do think persistence is what really sets us apart. Other companies have really good varieties as well. I just believe that ours remain excellent through time. And I think that that's really important, especially again, with it being a perennial crop, a farmer wants it to last and have a good stand for years. So I think that that's kind of the proof is in the pudding. You know, you have to wait for it and it has to show itself. But
You've kind of alluded to this, but what are some of the things that you're most proud of? I know that it's a team effort, but what are some of the things that you're most proud of right now in the research and development that you're doing for the products that Legacy not only already has, but is going to bring to market?
yeah, I really do. I mean, for my background as a pathologist, I think that that is so exciting when you think about, you know, different environmental conditions. And I know I keep saying this, but again, with it being a perennial crop, you know, one summer you might have a really tough anthracnose pressure. Well, you know, 1 year later, you might have a really wet summer and maybe a Phantomyces is a problem. So I really am proud and excited about our material that's going to have a very wide, you know, pest resistance package essentially. Because that's kind of, it's almost like an insurance policy, you know, like you have the genes there in the material and they're there, they're ready. And no matter what shows up, it might be different from year to year. It's really hard to predict. So my job is to make sure that it can kind of withstand whatever holds up or whatever shows up rather. So that's really exciting. And then just, you know, when we visit these old plots here at the research station, I think that that is just a really, really cool thing that we do here, which is, you know, when we're doing our yield trials, we're planting, you know, the 20 or so new varieties replicated 4 times. So that's a really unique situation where you can stand on one piece of ground and you can point and see, well, that's a competitive variety. This is our brand new experimental. And it's crazy, you know, like some of them really are just so showy. And it's, you know, it's really rewarding to see that after years, again, of work in the lab, work in the nurseries, work in the greenhouse, like the stuff that we're doing, the time that it takes, it truly does pay off. And that is just so exciting. And it's really one of those things that's it's so visual that it's like, whoa, like we're not just making this up. Like this is the real deal.
Well, you mentioned this before, but just the term legacy, I think you're back in your home area. You're working for a company called Legacy, and you're working on a perennial crop. All of these seem to go together for something that you truly enjoy there.
Yeah, I know. It's one of those things I can start to think about a lot. Like, whoa, how did I find myself here? Like it was just, yeah, very serendipitous. And it is such a small industry, you know, alfalfa in general, like in the private sector, but also in the public sector. It's just, you know, there's fewer and fewer companies and people doing this. So I try not to, you know, freak out about that. Like, well, the alfalfa, the future of this crop. But yeah, I am really excited to work with a really, really good team here. And also, you know, a lot of folks at the universities are just really, really fired up. And, you know, they're doing really good research as well that we can collaborate with. And for my background in academia, I really do appreciate that sort of collaborative mindset because we're all answering the same problems. You know, we're all working on the same things. Some people just have more time to focus on, you know, very, very specific niche things. So as a breeding program, I have to have a pretty wide scope. But it's nice that, you know, there are experts in all of these different diseases all over the country as well.
What does the future hold for research and legacy seeds?
Well, I wish I had a magic crystal ball because, again, I kind of mentioned, you know, a lot of the stuff that we're doing, it takes years before it would reach the market. So my job when I'm thinking about the future and like a 5-year plan, 10-year plan, is I need to be in constant communication with our salespeople, with our growers, with our farmers, because when they see something that might be a problem, it might be small now, but I need to start working on it now so that, you know, if it ever becomes a big problem 5 years from now, we're ready. So I think that's kind of an open-ended question. You know, I think as these pathogens evolve, you know, they're microbes, they change. As those pathogens change, I'm always going to be working to maintain that resistance. It's not something you just get and it stays and it's stable. biology is crazy, you know, so there's always going to be stuff in the future that develops into new problems that I need to, you know, I need to be talking with people who grow our alfalfa, who are seeing their fields, and I have to be out in our research fields a lot, but also our growers, and just, you know, have more my ear on the ground kind of, because none of us know exactly what the future holds. So I have to I have to do my best to, you know, achieve those goals that we've always had. And it's gonna, I would guess it's gonna become, you know, more complicated as time unfolds and the weather patterns remain as wild as they have been.
Sure, sure. You're there and you know things far better than I. Are there any pieces of the story that we've left out or things that you want to add in, whether it's things with research, the past, the present? If not, that's fine, but I always like to ask that just to make sure that you feel like we've covered things.
Yeah, I know. I feel like, I guess I don't know exactly what we talked about with Dave Husted, but you know, he's a pretty humble guy. And it's really been really nice to work with him. And I just can't even imagine from his perspective. He started this research program essentially as a one-man team for almost 20 years. And we've just experienced kind of this explosion in growth over the last 5 years. And I am excited to continue to grow the program, but I also think that, you know, Dave really modeled a very sustainable growth. I think that he's, you know, a very thorough, intentional person. And I do appreciate that. And I hope that I can continue to grow his program that he started, and, you know, bring more people on the team and have basically just do more of what he already has done, and not get too carried away. So, you know, it can be tempting to get really excited and drawn into all these, you know, different areas. And I think that, you know, Dave was really good at being intentional with what he said yes to and what he said no to. And, you know, he had a very good intuition as a plant breeder. He has created this amazing germplasm essentially that I get to continue to play with and work with. And that's just a really exciting situation that I am in. And I'm really excited to continue to, you know, bring more people on the team and just do more.
Right.
But
Very good. Well, it was a good answer there at the end, and I'm glad how you brought Dave Husted in. And you know, he had a lot of. You're right. He's certainly humble, but he also elaborated on how he got started, but also, you know, his relationship in a sense with you, and kind of a little bit of mentorship, but still allowing you to, you know, have your ability to be able to create and so forth, and be the director too. So, Olivia, it sounds like that you really enjoy working with Legacy Seeds and leaving a legacy through the research that you do.
yes, yeah, I thank you for the time today. It's always a pleasure to talk about the company and the crop, and, you know, just my part in that big world. So thank you so much.
Thank you.